Today, we will learn how to provide unpleasant feedback. Because let's face it, no matter what euphemisms like constructive or actionable we use, it is always unpleasant to hear that you have done something wrong. That's why most new managers are hesitant to provide feedback which is not outright praise. But when you have a team member who is not performing, the longer you wait to address it, the worse it will become. So here comes our first tip. Any feedback, but especially the one aiming to correct behavior or performance, needs to be communicated as close to the event that provoked it as possible. It makes it much easier for your employee to find a connection between your assessment and the work they have done. And it sticks more. However, check your emotions first. If you're very angry, maybe it is better to wait a bit until you have contained your reactions. That is not to say that you should leave all emotion out when you deliver feedback. It just means that you should use emotion in a deliberate and controlled way. So how do we provide constructive feedback? There are a few main steps that you need to go through. Present the facts. Telling someone that they need to be more detail-oriented would be much more effective and undisputable if you have examples of errors or escalations to share. If your employee does not seem very receptive to the feedback, you can share them in the beginning of the conversation. If they're not challenging your assessment, you can keep the examples for later stages of your discussion. Identify the root cause. The next step in the conversation would be to try and understand why the error happened. It may be that there is a health or family issue which is causing a temporary dip in performance, or the employee may not understand their task or their expectations well enough, or they lack training, or it could even be that they don't really care if they do their job well or not. And that's the worst scenario. Depending on the findings in the previous step, you can agree on the next actions each of you will take. If there are external factors that are affecting the employee's focus and abilities, you can try to offer support, like flexible hours or some time off. If the employee lacks knowledge or understanding, it is time to bring out those examples you have prepared. Together, you can go through them and explain where the mistake happened and how it can be avoided in the future. You can agree on additional training or closer monitoring for a period of time. As I said, the most challenging situation is when the employee lacks motivation and accountability for the work they do. In those cases, you should also go through the examples of the employee's mistakes, but you will most likely have to stress on the next step a bit more than in the other cases. When deciding on the next actions, it is important that both parties make a commitment towards the improvement of the employee's performance. It should be explicit what each of you is expected to do. Explain your expectations and the consequences. You should take the time to explain your expectations from your team member. Hopefully, you have done it already in your first meetings with the team, and this would be just a refresher. You should also make very clear what the consequences of continued mistakes, underperformance, or undesired behavior will be. This should not sound like a threat, but at the same time should not sound like something negotiable. And now we come to the emotions. I did say earlier that you should not provide unpleasant feedback while you are angry. The reason is that if your emotions are overwhelming, there is a high chance you will miss some of the steps above. However, this does not mean that you should not display anger or frustration. Humans are programmed to react to emotions from infancy. Emotions are also what drive a large portion of our behavior. This means that if you want to change someone's behavior or make them truly hear what you're saying, you need to provoke the right emotions in them. If you go in the conversation displaying only happiness and joy, it would be difficult to convince your team member that what they did was wrong, even if you say all the right words. Now let's address another emotional aspect of sharing feedback. Many new managers are afraid to give unpleasant feedback because they think that their employees will no longer like them. Let me put your mind at rest. This would not happen in 99% of the time. And even if it does, you don't need your employees to like you. You need them to trust you. And they will trust you only if you're honest with them, even if it's not always pleasant. So let's go over it again. Making sure that your employees understand and accept your constructive feedback requires a few steps. First, you need to present the facts and share examples. Then you need to identify the root cause. After that, you need to agree on a course of action. And finally, you need to talk about the consequences and your expectations.